Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video.
All three babies were crying when my husband finally snapped. I am Lauren, 32, and I was holding a bottle. One screamed in my arms, one shrieked from the crib corner. My husband stood in the doorway and watched us like strangers. Then he opened his mouth and threw the first grenade. I did not even look up when he started. I just tipped the bottle and tried to burp the baby. Nights like this already blurred together in my head. He usually cursed under his breath, then went for more formula. This time he stepped forward and raised his voice toward me. I am so done with them. He rubbed his face with one hand. The baby in my arms jerked like he understood. I tried to laugh it off, my voice came out tight. You are tired right now, it is just tonight. He dropped his hand and stared straight at the baby in my arms. No, I mean it now though. I hate their existence and everything that came with them. His voice stayed low, but every word hit like a slap. The baby in my arms wailed harder and I still would not look up. In the monitor behind him, our other two thrashed in their crib space. One flung both arms wide like he was falling without end. I wanted to go to them, but my feet would not move. My husband stepped closer and the doorway stopped feeling safe at all. I remember thinking then that this was just exhaustion. Do not talk like that about them. My voice cracked halfway through hard. I shifted the baby higher and turned my shoulder toward his chest. He laughed once without humor and shook his head at the floor. They scream all night and I cannot think or breathe here. You wanted this circus, you kept saying more would be fun. Now look at us, I'm a ghost at work. I drag myself through meetings and then come home to this screaming. He waved his hand at the crib like he was pointing at trash. I told myself he did not mean a word while my cheeks burned. One of the babies coughed and gagged on a sob, my heart stopped. I moved past him fast and pressed a hand to that tiny back. Behind me I heard his fist hit the doorframe, not the crib. The sound still made my shoulders jump because anger in that room felt wrong. I whispered, please stop, and I hated how small I sounded. Writing this now, I can hear that first bang clearer than any lullaby. Back then I stored it in the same drawer as normal marital fights. I told myself couples with one baby probably said worse things nightly. I refused to say the word hate out loud because that made it solid. So I floated above it instead and pretended the night would reset everything. The baby on my shoulder finally let out a long wet burp and sagged. I shifted him to the crib and checked his chest for steady rise. The other two were still wailing so hard their faces almost disappeared. My husband watched me move between them like a nurse on a shift. You see what this is right now, this is not a family. I spun around so fast my hip bumped the crib rail behind me. Do not say that, this is our family even if it is loud. The words came out sharp and shaky, and I barely recognized my own voice. He looked up finally like he was waking from some long blackout. For a second I thought he would apologize and I almost let myself breathe. Whatever you deal with this now, I am leaving. He yanked the door open so hard one picture on the wall rattled. The babies flinched at the sound and started another round of terrified crying. He walked away without looking back once and his footsteps thudded down the hall. I stood alone between three cribs and his words buzzed louder than the crying. I rocked and fed and shushed them for another hour while the sky lightened. Every time my mind tried to wander his voice slammed back into it. I hate their existence and everything that came with them replayed on a loop. I kept telling myself he was just tired and stressed and overwhelmed and I almost believed it. Now I know that night was not the explosion, it was the warning shot. He walked into the nursery whistling like nothing ugly had happened. The babies were fussing in little tired bursts, not full screams. My arms shook from holding them for hours and I kept rocking. He leaned on the doorframe and smiled like we were filming a commercial. My brain felt fuzzy but his grin cut through everything like a blade. Morning, girls. He stretched his shoulders and kissed the air above my head. His lips brushed my hair and my stomach flipped like I might puke. I felt sweat dried on my neck from the night I had survived. He sniffed once and laughed under his breath like this was some sitcom. I waited for even one word about last night and nothing came. No sorry, no I lost it, no I went too far. He just stepped around a pile of tiny clothes and peeked into a crib. Hey there, little guy. His voice turned soft, and I wondered if I imagined everything. You know how your body remembers better than your brain sometimes. My shoulders tensed. As soon as he leaned over that crib rail, I actually shifted closer without deciding to move, like I was guarding. He rubbed a tiny belly with 2 fingers and watched the little kicks. I stared at his hand and waited for that same rage to surface. Instead, he said he could take the late meeting for me today. He brushed crumbs off his shirt that were not even there yet. We can trade off, maybe I come home earlier this week. His tone was light, almost upbeat, like he had made a plan already. It sounded like logistics, not an apology, and I clung to it anyway. If he mentions the night, then it becomes real, that was my logic. If he acts normal, maybe I can shove that whole scene into shadow. I told myself exhausted people say cruel things they do not believe. I told myself I had surely twisted his words inside my own fear. That is how fast you start rewriting reality when you are desperate. One of the babies let out a sharp cry that rose fast. I bent to lift him and felt my lower back scream in protest. My husband stepped in and reached out first with a quick movement. I got him, you take a shower or something. The way he said it made it sound like a reward I had earned. I watched him cradle that small body like he had all the patience. He bounced lightly and hummed a made-up tune from his throat. The baby settled in less than a minute, which annoyed me irrationally. It made the night feel even more like some glitch only I remembered. It made me wonder if I had overreacted, and maybe I was the problem. When I finally showered, I kept expecting him to burst through the door. I thought he might shout again, tell me he regretted fatherhood forever. Nothing happened though, just the faint noise of baby sounds down the hall. Water ran over my face, and I told myself he was just overwhelmed. I did not use the word danger once, not even in my head. By the time I came back out, he had 3 bottles lined up. He moved between the cribs with quick, efficient motions, almost impressive. Look at me. He grinned and showed off a tiny burp rag on his shoulder. You are not the only expert around here anymore. I forced a smile so hard my cheeks hurt by the end. I thanked him for helping, like he had done something heroic. Inside, I kept replaying his words from the night like a secret recording. I hate them, I hate this, I hate everything that came with this life. Even remembering it now makes my chest tight like I am back there. He caught me staring for a second and his eyes narrowed just slightly. What, you look like you saw a ghost or something. He chuckled and kissed the closest forehead in reach, not mine. I panicked and shook my head and said I was just tired. That moment was my first real lie for him, not to him. We moved to the kitchen in a clumsy, half-awake dance. He opened cabinets, I mixed formula, nobody mentioned the word hate. He started talking about an email from his boss and some project. Office talk filled the air and pushed the night further away inch by inch. If you had walked in, you would have thought we were just new parents. At one point, he cracked a joke about installing soundproof walls around the nursery. He laughed at his own line and raised his eyebrows at me for approval. I let out this weird, thin sound that was supposed to be a laugh. My hands shook while I rinsed a bottle, and I hoped he did not notice. He did notice though, I know that now, because his mouth tightened a little. You know, I was just venting last night. He dropped the sentence like a casual aside, not a confession. He did not look at me while he spoke, he watched the coffee drip. Everybody says messed up stuff when they are pushed past the edge. He shrugged one shoulder and added sugar to his cup like nothing huge happened. Something inside me loosened the second he acknowledged anything at all. Venting sounded so much smaller than hatred, almost harmless if you repeat it. I latched onto that explanation the way people grab a ledge. I nodded and pretended that word fixed everything like a magic eraser. I did not ask him what exactly he believed he had vented. Triple screaming will scramble anyone's brain. He tapped his forehead and gave me a tired half smile. We just need to get through this crazy phase and we are good. The way he said we made me feel like maybe we still existed. I wanted to believe him so badly that I ignored my own memory. While he talked, he wrapped an arm around my waist, almost absent. The gesture should have been comforting, but my muscles stayed tight. My mind flashed back to his fist hitting wood in the nursery hours before. The contrast made my stomach twist, but I still leaned into him a little. I chose the softer version of him and shoved the other one down deep. Later that morning, he sent me a quick text from the other room. It popped up while I was rocking one baby who refused to nap. Promise me you know I do not mean stuff like th. And I stared at the screen longer than I should have before replying. My fingers typed back, of course, while my throat felt scraped raw. Reading that text now, I hear what is missing between those lines. He did not write what stuff, he did not name it on purpose. He kept it vague enough that we could both pretend it was minor. Back then I was grateful for even that tiny scrap of acknowledgement. I did not realize vague apologies are a great place for future denial. When he came back into the nursery around noon, he looked energized. He had fresh clothes on and his hair was pushed back neatly. Okay, game plan. He clapped once, too loud for the sleeping baby in the corner. Tonight we trade shifts, nobody gets stuck out here alone again. It sounded thoughtful, it sounded fair, it sounded like partnership. Hearing him say nobody gets stuck almost made me cry on the spot. He rubbed my shoulder and told me to nap when he finished lunch. He even joked about making a chart to keep us on track. The organized version of him always made me feel like things were solvable. This is the messed up part that still embarrasses me. I remember feeling proud of him that day, like he was growing. I told my tired brain that real monsters do not plan feeding schedules. I decided scary people do not kiss their babies and call them nicknames. So he could not be dangerous, obviously that is what I told myself. By late afternoon, we moved around each other more smoothly. We swapped babies without talking, we knew who needed what sound. He even took a picture of the three of them and joked about chaos. He posted it with some cheerful caption about never sleeping again. Anyone who saw it would think we were exhausted but happy and united. Every tiny normal thing he did turned into evidence in my head. Evidence that last night had been a fluke, not a warning. Evidence that tired words could not outweigh a whole day of effort. I stacked those little proofs up until they blocked out my fear. I did not ask how quickly they might topple when pressure returned. That evening he brought me a glass of water while I nursed one. Team effort, remember, he said, touching his glass to mine lightly. The twins in the crib made soft, restless noises just on the edge. His eyes went to them and for a fraction of a second something dark flickered. It vanished so quickly that I wondered if my mind had invented it. Tonight I will take the first round, you sleep. He brushed my hair away from my face like he adored me. I felt relief fled my body so hard my knees almost buckled. He kissed my forehead and smelled like soap and coffee and calm. You cannot imagine how much I wanted that version of him to be real. I went to bed early and lay there staring at the ceiling. Every little sound from the monitor made my whole body jolt. I waited for a shout, a thud, another sentence about hating this life. None of that came, just the usual baby noises and low humming. Eventually my eyes closed, not from peace, just from pure exhaustion. When I look back at that day, it feels like a stage set. Every joke, every soft touch, every cheerful photo was a prop. He was not pretending to love them, he did love them sometimes. That is what made everything so confusing and so hard to leave later. The ugliest truth is this: the cruelty did not cancel out the tenderness. He ripped his headphones off and glared at the crib before he looked at me. The laptop screen behind him showed frozen faces from his meeting. One of our boys howled like someone had flipped a switch inside him. Can you make him stop for 5 minutes? His voice hit me harder than the crying. I had another baby on my chest and a third in my lap. My shirt was damp and my arms were shaking from holding them. I bounced my knee and patted a tiny back and counted breaths. The wail from the crib only climbed higher like an alarm that would not quit. I felt all those eyes on the screen even from across the room. He slapped the mute button and leaned close to my face. If I lose this client because of this noise, I swear. His jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. He pointed at the crib like it was an offense on the field. Something in me shrank even while my hands kept moving. I scooped the screaming one up with this awkward twisting motion. My lower back lit up like someone had jammed a knife there. The boy screamed into my ear and kicked at my ribs wildly. I whispered nonsense and rubbed his tiny spine in fast circles. My heart hammered because that meeting felt like life support. While I tried to settle him, another envelope slid through the door slot. I heard the soft thud against the floor and my stomach turned. I did not have to open it to know it was another bill. Just that sound alone made my lungs feel too small. Money and babies and his career all pressed on the same bruise. He unmuted and smiled at the camera like he was relaxed. Sorry guys, neighbor's dog again. He lifted his coffee mug toward the screen like everything was normal. Behind that fake grin his eyes were flat and very far from soft. I bounced 2 boys and prayed the third would stay asleep. You know that weird moment when you realize you are background noise? That is what I felt in that room while he performed for work. The babies were a problem to explain away with jokes. I was the person he gestured at without actually looking at my face. Later I told myself I was probably reading too much into it. The call dragged on and the twins started fussing in sync. Little restless whimpers turned into overlapping sharp cries. He hit mute again and spun toward me so fast his chair rolled back. Take them downstairs or something, I cannot think at all. His voice came out tight enough to cut skin. I wanted to yell that there was no downstairs quiet enough. I wanted to point out that my arms were full of his children. Instead I nodded like I was his assistant and not his partner. I gathered 3 warm squirming bodies and staggered toward the doorway. Their cries bounced off the walls behind me like we were being chased. On my way out I stepped on that new envelope. The corner folded under my heel and I almost slipped. I bent with a baby against each shoulder and snagged it up. The return address made my vision blur for a second. Another notice, another thing we were ignoring while everything else screamed. Later that afternoon, he dropped the stack of bills onto the table. The thump made one of the boys jerk awake on the play mat. Look at this disaster. He spread them out like a losing hand in a card game. I kept rocking the sleepy baby and pretended my hands were steady. He jabbed one envelope with his finger until the paper wrinkled. Hospital utilities, credit cards, it is never ending. His voice grew louder with each word like someone turning a dial. He did not say our expenses, he said your situation, your choices. That little shift felt bigger than the whole pile of paper. You wanted 3 at once. He waved his arm like he was tossing something away. You kept saying we would figure it out and it would be fine. He stared at me like I had tricked him into some elaborate trap. My mouth opened and nothing intelligent came out. The thing is, he had wanted kids too. He had talked about family and laughter and holidays and all that. In that moment, though, I started wondering if I invented those conversations. That is what shame does, it edits your memory to protect the other person. I found myself apologizing for math my body could not control. I am doing everything I can here. He pushed a hand through his hair and left it there. I am working nonstop and still we are drowning in this mess. He looked past the babies like they were clutter and not people. I swallowed hard and asked what he wanted me to do. Get them quiet, at least when I am on calls. He spoke slowly like I was not following basic instructions. Figure out some schedule that does not wreck my job too. He let out a sharp laugh with no humor behind it. They might be loud, but the mortgage company is louder. That line punched the air right out of my chest. He had just stacked our actual kids against a bank in his head. I looked at the boys and saw them flailing against numbers on a page. I told myself he was just stressed and dramatic in that exact moment. Now I know he was starting to resent them as a whole. One of the babies started crying again, this choppy, scared sound. I picked him up immediately and he clung to my shirt with tiny fists. See, they never stop. My husband paced behind the chair and rubbed his forehead hard. I bounced our son and felt caught between comforting and apologizing. I cannot even hear my own thoughts in this place. He pointed up at the ceiling like the noise came from the sky. Nobody at work understands what it is like here right now. He gave a short, bitter smile and shook his head. They go home to one kid, maybe a dog, not this circus. When he used that word for our life, my face went hot. I tried to turn it into a joke before it stuck to me. Hey, some people pay for a show like this. I forced out a laugh that sounded nothing like actual laughter. He stared at me for a long beat like I had just insulted him. "This is not funny, Lauren." He dropped my name like a stone between us. "These kids wrecked everything we built, and you are cracking jokes." His chest moved fast and shallow, and his hands balled into fists. The baby on my shoulder felt suddenly very small against all that anger. In that second, I did what I always do when I panic. I tried to smooth it over with humor and softness. "Come on, we're just tired, we will figure it out." I reached for his wrist like I could drag him back from the edge. He pulled his arm away before my fingers even touched him. "You still do not get it." His voice. He dropped lower instead of louder, and that scared me more. "My whole life is gone, everything that mattered is buried under this." He swept his hand toward the play mat where tiny legs kicked aimlessly. "They ruined everything, and you will not even admit it." The word ruined sat between us like something alive. I felt my vision tunnel for a second because he sounded so sure. I glanced at our boys, completely unaware, gripping a soft toy together. My brain scrambled for some way to reframe what he just said. I landed on the weakest option, denial disguised as calm. "You do not mean that." I heard myself almost whisper and hated how fragile I sounded. "You are angry and overwhelmed, and you are just venting again." I held on to that last word because it had saved me once. He smiled, but it was a cold, tight thing. "You keep telling yourself that so you can sleep." He stacked the envelopes into a neat pile very carefully. "I lost my peace, my space, my future for this chaos." He tapped the stack against the table until the edges lined up. "They took it all, and you just keep feeding them like nothing happened." That sentence sliced through something inside me I had been protecting. It was not just about being tired anymore, it was about regret. He was starting to blame the babies for every part of his own unhappiness. I felt this flash of anger for them and for me and even for him. Then a tiny hiccup broke the moment. One of the boys let out a startled squeak and then a sob. His little face scrunched up and his fists flew toward his mouth. I moved on instinct and gathered him up against my chest. The warmth of his body against mine grounded me for a second. Behind me, I heard my husband curse under his breath. "This is exactly what I am talking about." He pushed his chair back so hard it bumped the wall. "Noise mess Bill's needy hands on me all the time." He pressed his palms over his eyes and breathed in through his teeth. "How long am I supposed to live like this?" I remember standing there with a crying baby and a stack of debt. I remember thinking, this is what I signed up for though. I remember starting to say, we will adjust, couples do this every day. Halfway through the sentence his head snapped up sharply. His eyes were bright and wild, and suddenly I shut my mouth. "Stop pretending you are okay with this." He took one step closer and dropped his hands to his sides. "You are exhausted and miserable, and you still play cheerleader." He let out a short, ugly laugh that made the baby cry harder. "Maybe lying to yourself helps, but it does nothing for me." That was the first time it felt like he resented my coping. Up until then, he had seemed grateful for my constant optimism. Now it was one more thing he could not stand in this house. I could feel my own patience fray in little threads. I had to grip the back of a chair so I would not shake. "Well, what do you want then?" The question came out sharper than I intended because I was shaking. "You want me to admit this is awful? Fine, it is awful." My voice cracked on the last word and the baby flinched. "Does that magically make the bills vanish or the crying stop?" He stared at me like I had finally revealed a secret side. For a second we were just two people trapped in the same burning room. Then his gaze flicked back to the boys on the floor. "I want my old life back." He did not look ashamed when he said it. That answer knocked the breath right out of me. He did not say, "I want rest or help or therapy." He wanted something impossible, a version of reality without them. Something about the way he said old life made my skin crawl. It sounded like the babies were a disease and not a family. I laughed. I still cringe when I think about that reflex. It came out high and shaky and completely wrong for the moment. "You do not really mean that, you are just frustrated right now." I reached for that word again like a tiny broken shield. His face went blank, not angry, just wiped clean. "Sure, I am just frustrated." He turned away and started gathering up the bills again. He tucked them into a folder with slow, deliberate movements. If I keep saying that, maybe it will even be true someday. Watching him pack our problems into that folder felt like a rehearsal. Like he was practicing putting his resentment somewhere tidy and hidden. I let him because the alternative terrified me more. I changed the subject to dinner and feeding times and nap windows. I watched his shoulders loosen and knew I had helped him avoid the truth. I wish I could tell you that fight woke me up. I wish I could say I grabbed the car keys and ran then. Instead, I convinced myself harsh words under pressure did not define him. I focused on the way he still rocked them to sleep sometimes. I told myself every stressed parent had a moment where they snapped. What I did not realize was how often his moments would repeat. How each new bill and each fresh tantrum would add another layer. By the time I finally believed his resentment was real, it was everywhere. It had woven itself through normal days and small routines. Chapter 3 is where that weaving really started. I just refused to see it. The first tab on his laptop was titled, "I Hate Being a Dad." I was only trying to pay a medical bill while the boys napped. My finger missed the tab I wanted and hit that one instead. The page loaded faster than my brain, the words just slammed in. For a second I thought it had to be some random ad. It was a forum thread with hundreds of comments stacked in lines. People were venting about kids, partners, money, all of it. Right at the top there was a post marked with his username. Same handle he used for streaming and ordering takeout, no doubt. My heart started pounding in my ears before I even read his words. Father of triplets here. I remember that part first because it knocked the air out. Not many people can open a sentence like that, it is specific. My eyes jumped over the rest, then dragged backward in slow motion. I forced myself to read every line like I was swallowing glass. I thought I wanted kids, I was wrong. I only ever pictured one, maybe two at most. Now my entire life is nothing but shrieking and bills and resentment. I look at my boys and do not feel love, just pressure and panic. Sometimes I wish they just did not exist and I hate myself for it. My hand clamped around the edge of the laptop so hard it hurt. I could feel the grooves under my fingers but not my fingertips. For a moment everything around me went weirdly quiet and distant. It was just that word wish floating there like a confession. Wish they did not exist, not wish things were easier, huge difference. Someone had replied asking if he meant it or was just exhausted. Another asked if his partner knew he regretted being a parent. His response sat right underneath, neat and casual and devastating. She is still in denial about how bad this actually is. She keeps insisting it will get better but it will not. I was that she. Reading it written out ripped something open in my chest. I felt exposed in a room with nobody else in it. He had turned me into a character in his anonymous complaint. Not partner, not wife, just some naive woman who would not face reality. Then there was the part that still stings even now. I resent her body for giving us 3 at once. My stomach lurched so hard I had to press my palm over my mouth. I stared at that sentence even after the letters blurred. He blamed my actual body, not bad luck, not circumstances, me. You know that feeling when your brain just stalls out? Like it is trying to reboot while you are still awake. I kept telling myself all parents vent somewhere to stay sane. I tried to frame it as him, avoiding dumping everything directly on me. But venting and wishing your kids never existed are not the same league. I scrolled down hoping the next line would soften it somehow. Maybe he would say he loves them deep down beneath the frustration. Instead, I saw more replies where he painted our home like a prison. Every day is the same noise and mess, and I cannot breathe. I think about walking out at least once a week. My body went cold all at once like someone flipped a switch. Walking out was no longer a joke tossed in arguments. He was typing it out for strangers to dissect. They were telling him he deserved happiness and freedom and peace. Very few mentioned 3 babies who existed regardless of his feelings. I kept scrolling because I could not stop hurting myself by reading. There were other posts in his history I had never seen. Anyone else secretly hate their kids but stay because it is cheaper? Did your relationship die completely after children or just mostly? Each one read like a small brick in a wall he was building. I clicked his profile without thinking and saw months of activity. That was the part that really made my skin crawl. This was not a one-time breakdown at 3 in the morning. He had been logging in over and over building this anonymous character. A guy trapped by triplets and a delusional wife who would not wake up. At the top of the page was a little icon for messages. There was a number next to it, bright and impossible to ignore. I told myself not to open it because that felt like crossing a line. Then I pictured him telling some stranger more than he told me. I clicked before my conscience could finish its sentence. The first message thread was from someone with a throwaway username. Do you ever think about just leaving and starting over somewhere? 3 kids so young will not even remember you anyway. I felt bile rise in my throat as my eyes ran over it. I scrolled down to see what he had answered back. I think about it all the time, honestly. If I did it now, they would not know me and I could be free. The word free next to the idea of disappearing made me dizzy. I had to pull the laptop slightly closer to steady my hands. There was more. It kept going and I kept reading. I would pay support, of course. I am not a monster. She is a good mom, she can handle them on her own. I just cannot stand living in that house or hearing them nonstop. Every sound feels like another reminder my life is over. Sometimes I look at them and feel nothing but anger. Good mom. It landed like a slap and a compliment at the same time. To him, those words meant I was also his exit plan. I was reliable enough to raise 3 kids but not worth staying for. I stared at the screen and realized he already pictured us without him. Another message chain caught my eye further down the list. The last line preview showed my name in the middle of stranger's text. I opened it with a weird detached kind of calm. If I was already gutted, might as well see the whole wound. The first line had my knees nearly drop out. Do not have kids with a woman who romanticizes motherhood. Learn from my mistake. That was his opener about me to some random user. He went on about how I had trapped myself in domestic life. As if I had dragged him into this on my own fantasies. When she talks about our future, it is always about the boys. Family trips and birthdays and milestones, never about us. I am just the wallet and the extra pair of hands. I wish I had noticed sooner how obsessed she was with the idea of kids. If I could go back, I would run. Reading obsessed about myself cracked something in my self-image. I had seen myself as hopeful, maybe naive, but not that. Suddenly, every baby shower and excited store trip looked warped. In his narrative, I was the crazy one who had driven him here. He was just the poor man stuck with a woman who loved her children too much. I do not know how long I sat there staring at that message. Long enough that my leg went numb under the chair. Long enough that one of the monitors crackled and I jumped. The sound yanked me out of the screen and back into the house. My eyes flew to the nursery feed, checking all 3 little bodies. They were fine. One rolled over, another sucked on his hand, the third just shifted. They had no idea their father was online discussing escape plans. They had no idea I was reading about how disposable we were. I lowered the laptop for a second and pressed my forehead into my arm. You know that point where anger and heartbreak mix into something strange? I hit that point right there at my kitchen table. Part of me wanted to slam the laptop shut and never mention it. Another part wanted to march into his office and shove it in his face. Instead, I just went back to the page like it might explain everything. There was one more message at the bottom of that chain. Sent only a few days before I found it. Update: nothing has changed, I still hate this life. I do not hate them as people exactly, I hate their existence. He had typed that same phrase he once threw at me in the nursery. Seeing those words on the screen felt worse than hearing them spoken. Text is deliberate, you can stop before you hit send. He had written it, looked at it, and pressed send anyway. That was the moment I stopped being able to call it venting. There is only so much violence you can stuff under that label. The front door opened while I was still staring at that last line. His keys landed in the bowl by reflex and the sound snapped me upright. My heart jolted so hard I almost knocked the laptop off the table. I closed the message window with shaking hands and pulled up the bill site. I was still on his account, still in his world, and he was home. Hey! His voice came from behind me, casual and tired. He walked past and ruffled my hair like everything was normal. What are you up to in here? He reached for a glass from the cabinet while I tried to breathe steady. Paying the pediatric bill. I forced my voice to sound flat and ordinary. My thumb hovered over the trackpad, pretending to scroll the page. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see his profile picture tiny. That same username was still visible at the top if you knew where to look. He stepped close enough to see the screen clearly. My pulse hammered in my neck so hard it made my head buzz. For a split second, I thought I might throw up right there. He took a sip of water, glanced at the bill amount, and whistled low. "Those kids are draining us dry," he muttered, then walked away. It was surreal how fast the world snapped back into the usual script. He went to check on the boys while I sat frozen with his secrets. I could hear him cooing and making playful sounds down the hall. The same person who had written, "I hate their existence" last week. The split between his online self and his voice in that room was jarring. When he came back, he dropped onto the chair across from me. He stretched high, his legs out, and rubbed his shoulders like they hurt. "You okay? You look weirdly pale." He squinted at me, trying to read my face. That was the first time I realized I could lie convincingly to him. "Just tired, long day, you know." I shrugged like it was nothing and clicked submit on the payment. Inside my mind, everything was spinning in ugly circles. He nodded and started talking about some issue at work. The sound of his voice made every sentence I had read echo louder. I did not confront him that night, and I hate admitting that. I tucked the boys into their cribs and kissed their warm heads. He hovered in the doorway, cracking a joke about their crazy hair. I watched him adjust a blanket with careful hands. The man on my screen and the man in that doorway did not match. Lying in bed later, I could not stop replaying his online words. Every time I almost fell asleep, I saw that sentence about leaving. I kept trying to poke holes in what I had seen. Maybe he had exaggerated to fit in with the group. Maybe he had been drunk while posting, even though that was not his habit. Deep down, I knew better. That many posts over that many weeks are not random outbursts. They are a pattern, a story someone is choosing to tell about their life. And I was not the audience, I was the subject. He preferred strangers giving him sympathy to sitting down with me. I thought about waking him up and forcing a conversation right then. I imagined shoving the laptop into his hands and reading with him. In my head, he would break down and admit he was terrified. In my head, we would pick therapists and schedules and tackle it together. In real life, I turned onto my side and stared at the dark instead. The next morning, I opened my own account on that same site. Not to post, at least not yet, just to watch. His username popped back online sometime that afternoon from the office. I saw a new comment appear under his original thread. "Thanks for listening, it helps to know I am not alone in this." That line hit me almost as hard as anything else. He was alone by choice, not because he lacked a partner. I was right there in the same house, drowning in the same chaos. He just did not want to share the truth with someone who could challenge it. He wanted comfort without accountability, and he found it with strangers. Looking back, the laptop day was when denial stopped being innocent. Before that, I could claim I did not know how far his resentment went. After reading those messages, I knew it had roots and branches. I knew he was building a life in his head where we did not exist. And I still stayed, still smiled, still pretended we were fixable. He walked in and drove his fist into the crib edge. The wood rattled and all three babies exploded into raw panic. One boy jerked upright and hit his head on the side. Another rolled onto his face and shrieked into the mattress. My heart stopped for a second before it started pounding again. What did I just say about the noise? He leaned over the rail like he might climb into their space. His chest was heaving and his eyes were bright and unfocused. For one long beat, he did not glance at me at all. He just glared down at our sons like they were the enemy. I moved on instinct and put myself between him and the crib. My hand landed on the rail where his fist had hit. It still vibrated faintly under my palm, that is how hard he swung. "You cannot do that in here." My voice shook but came out louder than I expected. He dragged his attention up to my face slowly. Cannot do what? He spread his fingers like he had no idea what I meant. Knock on the furniture in my own house. The words sounded casual, but his jaw stayed clenched tight. The baby closest to him hiccuped and tried to catch a breath. Each little gasp scraped across the room like sandpaper. I reached back without looking and touched that tiny shoulder. Step away from them. This time my tone felt flat and cold in my own ears. He laughed once, short and ugly, then took half a step closer. I am not going to hurt anyone. His hand hovered over the rail again, fingers twitching. I just need them to stop for 5 minutes. The way he stressed them made my stomach twist. In my head, I saw those messages on the forum again. The ones about wanting out, about feeling nothing but anger. I pictured that sentence claiming he was not a monster. Right now, he looked like a man trying very hard to believe that. I realized my body believed the posts more than his face. If you cannot calm down, you have to leave this room. I kept my eyes on his, not his hands, on purpose. He tilted his head, almost amused, like I was a child. Or what, Lauren? His voice dropped lower, and that scared me more than yelling. Behind me, a baby let out a strangled cough through heavy sobs. I tried to turn and check him while still blocking the path. My arm brushed my husband's chest, and he flinched backward. And not like I hurt him, more like I burned him. Something in his expression shut down right then. You care more about their screaming than about my sanity. He jabbed a thumb toward his own chest, movements jerky. Every night the same thing, you take their side. He threw his arm out toward the cribs like pointing at clutter. They can do anything they want, and I am the problem. They are babies, they are not doing anything to you. The words flew out before I thought them through. His mouth twisted and he looked past me at the floor. They exist, that is enough. Hearing him recycle that line meant he had rehearsed it. One of the boys tried to roll and his leg got stuck. He kicked against the bars in blind terror. I rotated my body so I could reach him while still blocking. My hand shook as I freed his little foot. I could feel my husband's stare burning into the back of my neck. You need to leave this room now. I did not shout, I did not whisper, I just pushed the words. Go walk, go sit in the car, I do not care. If you are this angry, you cannot be in here with them. My throat felt raw, but I held his gaze. He took a step back and clapped slowly once, twice. Look at you, laying down rules like I am some threat. He laughed again, higher this time, almost hysterical. I am the one who lost everything and they get security detail. His arm swept across the nursery like it disgusted him. I did not move. It surprised both of us, honestly. Normally I rushed to smooth his edges when he spiraled. That night my feet stayed planted and my spine went rigid. Somewhere between the crib and the laptop, something in me hardened. He stared at me for a long second, then snorted. Fine, you want me gone, I am gone. He yanked the door open and it slammed into the wall. The sound made all 3 boys jump and scream harder. He did not turn around to see the way they flailed. As soon as he cleared the doorway, I dropped the tough act. My knees almost gave out as I leaned over the nearest crib. My hands moved fast, checking for red marks or bruises. All I found were shaking limbs and soaked eyelashes in terror. I lifted one, then another, then the third, and sank to the floor. For a while it was just me gasping and them wailing. I rocked them one by one until the cries shifted to whimpers. My shirt stuck to my back and my arms ached under their weight. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his fist coming down. I kept opening them again to prove he was not still there. Out in the hallway something crashed, maybe a chair, maybe his bag. The impact echoed, and one baby jerked awake again. My heart leapt into my throat like we were under attack. I listened hard for footsteps returning to the door. Instead I heard the front door slam and then silence. You know that quiet after a fight where sound feels heavier. That is what settled over the house once he left. The babies snuffled and hiccuped against my chest and shoulders. My own breathing felt too loud in the dark room. I realized my hands were still shaking minutes after he was gone. I stayed on the floor until all 3 finally slipped into shallow sleep. Then I laid them back in the cribs one at a time. I checked each small body again, fingers tracing arms and legs lightly. They looked fragile and tense even in sleep, fists still curled. I hated that their first memory of anger might be their father. In the hallway, my phone buzzed where I had abandoned it earlier. I picked it up with clumsy fingers and opened a browser. My search terms that night were not calm or rational. Signs you should leave with kids sat in the bar. Just seeing those words under my thumb made my eyes sting. I scrolled through result after result, none of them simple. Some talked about safety planning, some about counseling first. A lot of them said to trust your gut when you feel afraid. Mine had been whispering for weeks and I kept muting it. After the crib, it finally stopped whispering and started yelling. A baby coughed in his sleep and I jumped again. I lowered the volume on my phone and sat on the carpet. The glow from the screen lit my hands and nothing else. I found a number for a local hotline and stared at it. My thumb hovered over call and refused to move. I pictured strangers asking if he had ever hit me. I pictured admitting that he had not yet, not exactly. I heard my own voice trying to justify him to people I did not know. He did not strike them, he struck the furniture, he is just stretched thin. Even inside my head that sounded weak. In the end, I saved the number under a fake name. Just a first step, just in case, that is what I told myself. Then I opened my notes app and started typing a list. Birth certificates, immunization records, a couple days of clothes, formula. The basics you bring when you are not sure how long you are leaving. I deleted the list twice before I finally left it there. Each time I edit, my chest tightened more. By the third time, my thumb refused to swipe across the screen. That little column of words stayed on my phone like contraband. I turned the screen off and slid the phone under the mattress. He came back about an hour later. The front door clicked, not slammed this time, careful and slow. I heard his shoes land by the wall and keys drop in the bowl. My whole body went tense even before he spoke. His voice floated down the hallway, low and strange. I am not going to apologize for being human. He stayed outside the nursery, he did not cross the threshold. I am under insane pressure, and sometimes it comes out wrong. He leaned his shoulder against the frame and stared at the floor. I would never actually hurt them, you know that. I stayed between him and the cribs without thinking. They do not know that. My voice came out quiet and clipped, no decoration. They just know someone big slammed where they sleep. He winced just for a breath, then straightened. Are you seriously acting like I am dangerous now? His hands lifted in disbelief, palms facing me. Do you hear yourself, Lauren? He laughed, but it was more like a bark. This is exactly what those forums were warning about. That last line chilled me in a different way. He was thinking about those threads while standing in our doorway. I read what you wrote online. The words dropped out before I could reel them back. For a second, everything in his face went blank. His eyes snapped up and finally met mine full on. You should not have gone through my stuff. He pushed off the frame and took one step inside. I moved right back into his path without hesitation. We are not talking about privacy, we are talking about safety. He looked past me toward the cribs and then away fast. So you saw me venting to strangers, congratulations. He rubbed his mouth with the back of his hand. I was blowing off steam, not writing a manifest. Hearing that word in our hallway made my skin crawl. You said you wished they would just disappear. I kept my tone flat because if I got emotional he would spin it. You talked about leaving while they were young enough to forget. He stared at me but did not deny it. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff with him. I have thoughts, everyone has thoughts they do not share. He paced one small line then stopped again. I stayed, did I not? I get up and work and come home. He spread his arms like that effort settled the matter. You are the one snooping in my head and treating me like a criminal. That flipped something in the argument. Now I was the problem because I looked at what he wrote. Classic move, honestly, but in the moment it still scrambled me. I opened my mouth to argue, and nothing coherent came out. My head buzzed with too many pieces at once. He misread my silence as victory, I could see it. His shoulders loosened and he stepped back toward the hallway. Look, I am exhausted, they are screaming, money is tight. He ticked each item off on his fingers like bullet points. I hit wood one time and you are planning an escape mission. He had no idea how accurate that last phrase was. I felt my fingers curl around my phone in my pocket. I had not even realized I grabbed it off the mattress. Go sleep on the couch tonight. I surprised myself again with how firm it sounded. He shook his head, baffled. You cannot kick me out of my own room. His voice rose, then he looked toward the cribs and lowered it again. This is my house, my family, my whole life. For a second his eyes looked genuinely lost, not just angry. Then act like you want to keep them. The answer came out before I could soften it. His mouth opened and closed once, no words. He looked at each crib in turn, quick, almost guilty glances. Then he turned away and walked down the hall without another sound. I did not sleep that night, not really. Every creak from the living room kept me wide awake. I waited to hear him come back and apologize properly. I also waited to hear the front door again and footsteps leaving for good. Both possibilities felt equally real, which scared me more. The next morning he moved around the house like a ghost. He made coffee and packed his work bag without humming or joking. He avoided my eyes like they might burn through him. I will be late tonight, big deadline, do not wait up. The sentence hung there between us like a dare. After he left, I pulled my phone and opened that note. The list from the floor of the nursery looked short and brutal. I added car seats and charger and favorite stuffed animals. Then I added one more word at the bottom. Exit. For the next 2 days I started packing in tiny invisible ways. A few baby outfits went into a diaper bag instead of the drawer. Important papers moved from the closet to under the passenger seat. Snacks and wipes collected in a reusable grocery sack by the door. Every small relocation made my heart race like a siren. He did not notice, or he pretended not to. He came home later and later, smelling like office air. When he interacted with the boys, he swung between tender and distant. One minute he was kissing their cheeks and making silly noises. The next he was peeling a small hand off his leg with a sigh. On the third night after the crib incident, everything snapped again. Dinner was late because one twin had a low fever. The other two were clingy and whiny in that drained way. I was juggling medicine droppers and lukewarm bottles and fussing. He walked into the kitchen and stepped on a dropped toy. He did not trip, he did not get hurt, it was minor. Still, he kicked the toy across the floor like it had bitten him. Why is this place always a disaster? He threw his keys onto the counter hard enough to make me flinch. Do you even try to keep it under control anymore? I am holding a sick baby right now. My voice came out rough and tired, not sweet. You want the floor clear, you can help pick things up. He stared at me like I had spoken a foreign language. The baby on my hip whimpered and buried his face in my neck. I work all day and come back to this chaos. He gestured around at the scattered objects and half-finished tasks. I cannot even walk in my own home without stepping on something. He dragged a hand down his face, eyes squeezed shut. I swear, if I had known it would be like this. He did not finish the sentence, he did not have to. We both knew exactly how that line ended. That was my moment, the fork in the road. I could keep defending myself and begging him to see us differently. Or I could finally believe what he kept almost saying. I put the medicine bottle on the counter and steadied my breath. I am taking them to my sister for a while. The lie came smooth, even though I do not actually have a sister. We need space, all of us, this is not safe anymore. My hands went cold even as I spoke. He blinked, thrown off by the sudden shift. Safe, you're being dramatic again. He grabbed a glass and filled it halfway at the sink. You are tired, they are fussy, tomorrow will look different. He turned his back like the discussion was closed. I watched you punch a crib where our toddlers sleep. I set the baby in the playpen so my arms could move. I read that you think about leaving us completely. My voice did not rise, it just sharpened. Tomorrow is not going to fix any of that. He froze with his hand on the faucet handle. For a full 3 seconds he did not breathe or move. Then he exhaled hard and shook his head. You are blowing everything completely out of proportion. He took a sip of water like he needed the pause. If you walk out that door with them, do not expect me to chase you. He put the glass down and finally faced me again. There is only so much guilt one person can carry. He shrugged one shoulder, like that made him reasonable. If you want to be a single parent, that is your choice. That line should have hurt worse than it did. Mostly it clarified things. He was telling me exactly how much we weighed in his mind. Enough to complain about constantly, not enough to fight for. We were leverage in an argument, not a family to hold on to. I nodded once very slow. Okay. Nothing poetic, nothing dramatic, just that one word. He opened his mouth like he expected more, then shut it. He walked out of the kitchen and left me with the sound of my own heartbeat. I packed for real the next morning while he showered. Diaper bag, paperwork, a few shirts for me rolled tight. Favorite blankets, the one worn stuffed animal each boy clung to. The list from my phone finally became piles near the door. Every zip and click felt louder than running water. When he came out with a towel around his waist, he paused. "Why are all the car seats in the hallway?" His voice carried that suspicious edge I had been dreading. I tightened a strap on the nearest latch before answering. "I told you we are going to my sister." He stared at me, searching for cracks. "At least wait until the weekend." He reached for his clothes on the chair, avoiding my eyes. "I have too much going on at work right now to deal." The way he said deal made my skin crawl again. "I am not asking." My hands moved on autopilot, snapping buckles and adjusting harnesses. "The boys need quiet and you need time away from us." I swallowed hard and added the last part. "And I need to know you will not be slamming anything near their heads." He flinched just a little when I brought up the crib. For a second, something like shame flickered across his face. Then it hardened into annoyance again. "Enjoy your little vacation from reality, Lauren." He pulled on his shirt and grabbed his wallet from the dresser. We loaded the boys into the car in a strange, heavy silence. They kicked their feet and babbled, clueless. I checked each buckle twice, hands clumsy with adrenaline. He stood on the porch with his arms folded tight. He looked more like a neighbor watching than their father. "You are overreacting and everyone will tell you that." He leaned against the railing and studied the yard. "You will be back once you see it is the same everywhere." He did not hug anyone, did not touch the car. "Do not expect me to sit around waiting." I closed my door and my hands gripped the wheel. Through the windshield I saw him as a distant shape. One of the boys started whining and I shushed him automatically. My throat thickened but my voice stayed soft. "It is okay, baby, we are going." As I pulled away, he did not wave. He turned back toward the house like we were an interruption. In the rearview mirror, the building shrank with every turn. I waited for my phone to light up with a call or a text. It stayed dark for a very long time. Driving with 3 small kids screaming behind you is surreal. Part of you wants to cover your ears and turn around. The other part knows the only safe direction is forward. My eyes kept flicking between the road and the mirror. Each little face, red and confused, pushed my foot harder on the gas. Looking back, that drive was when I stopped being his partner. I became something else, someone who would stand in front of cribs. Someone who would read ugly words and believe them the first time. Someone who would leave before fists found softer targets than wood. I wish I had become her sooner. "I do not actually want a divorce." That was his opening line in the therapist's office. He looked straight at the counselor, not at me. His hand rested near my knee but did not touch it. Mine stayed clenched around a tissue I had not used yet. The therapist glanced at me. "Do you want the marriage to continue?" Her voice was calm in that trained way. My tongue felt thick and useless in my mouth. I nodded once because words might have cracked something open. He jumped in before I could add anything. "We are under insane stress with 3 toddlers." He leaned forward like he was presenting a case. I lost myself a little and she panicked and ran. He spread his hands like the whole situation was simple. Ran. That word lodged in my throat. I had not sprinted out with a suitcase in the night. I had packed car seats one strap at a time. But in his version I bolted because I could not handle reality. The counselor looked at me again. "How do you understand what happened?" Her pen hovered above a pad. I watched the tip instead of his profile. "If I stayed, I was afraid he would escalate," I finally said. He scoffed quietly and shifted in his chair. "She thinks I am some dangerous guy now." He shook his head and rubbed his jaw. "I hit furniture one time and suddenly I am a threat." His eyes flicked toward me for half a second. I swallowed hard. "You were already posting about leaving us," I answered. My voice sounded lower than usual, almost flat. "You were writing that you felt nothing but anger toward them." His shoulders stiffened but he did not deny it. The therapist held up a hand like a referee. I hear fear on one side and overwhelm on the other. She spoke slowly, no rush, no surprise. What do each of you need to feel safe with contact? That word contact landed like a brick. He straightened up, eager. I want to be with my kids, he said. I want them to know I am not the bad guy here. He glanced at me again on that last part. I could feel the accusation roll across the space between us. I realized then he was not saying I want my family. He was separating us in his language without thinking. Them and me like two problems to manage. I took a breath that trembled just enough to betray me. I need to know they will not be near your rage, I answered. He flinched at the word. Rage is dramatic. He sat back and crossed his arms. I get loud, I slam doors, I have never hit a person. He spoke the last word slowly, like it cleared him. You hit where they sleep, I reminded him. The counselor's pen finally touched paper. The scratch was soft, but I heard it clearly. He opened his mouth to argue, then shut it again. The silence after that felt heavier than any yelling. The therapist suggested a plan. Supervised visits at first, then reassess later. She offered numbers for parenting classes and anger management. He nodded at the list like he was already on board. In that moment I let myself hope again, just a little. Walking out of the office, he caught up with me. Thank you for not trashing me in there. He slid his hands into his pockets. I know you are angry, but you kept it pretty balanced. He gave me this sideways half smile I used to love. I stared at the parking lot instead of his face. I did not hold anything back, I answered. I do not have energy for spin anymore. He shrugged like he did not believe me. Therapy will help you see. I am not the villain, he muttered. You know that tired feeling when you see the pattern already. That is what washed over me walking to my car. He still framed everything as image management. Not what the boys needed, not what he needed to change. Just how he came across in that small room. The first supervised visit was at my friend's house. The boys were lined up on the couch with snacks. They kicked their feet when he walked in, surprised and excited. Daddy, one of them shouted, the first time I had heard it clear. For a second it almost knocked me over. He smiled, of course he did. He crouched down and opened his arms wide. They clambered off the cushions and stumbled toward him. He ruffled their hair and kissed their heads. I missed you guys, he said into their necks. Watching that hurt in a twisted way. They did not know any of the online posts. They just knew his laugh and his hands and his smell. They pressed close with complete trust. I had to grip the back of a chair to steady myself. My friend hovered in the kitchen, giving us space. She did not pretend not to listen though. He sat on the floor with a toy truck in one hand. Which one of you is the troublemaker today, he joked. All three pointed at each other and burst into giggles. For a while it looked almost normal from a distance. He let them climb on his back and pull at his sleeves. He lifted them one at a time into the air. I watched carefully for any flash of that other side. At first I did not see it. Then the youngest toppled and burst into loud crying. He had not fallen far, but his pride was hurt. He reached for his father, arms wide, face crumpled. My husband froze for half a beat, just long enough. His jaw tightened before his hands moved. My body noticed before my brain did. Every muscle went tense, ready to intervene. He did pick him up, I will give him that. He patted his back in an almost mechanical rhythm. Buddy, you are fine, no need to scream like that, he muttered. The words were light, but his eyes were somewhere else. The other two tugged on his arm, wanting more play. He shifted the crying boy off to me faster than necessary. Here, Mama's better at the dramatic stuff, he said. He turned back to the other two with forced energy. Later, as we packed up to leave, he pulled me aside. In there, in front of her, I have to be perfect, he whispered. He jerked his chin toward my friend's kitchen. But you know I am hanging on by a thread, right? His voice shook just enough to sound real. I know you are struggling, I answered quietly. I also know they are tiny and completely dependent on us. He rubbed the bridge of his nose, eyes squeezed shut. I am trying, he said. I am doing all the stuff on the list, okay. He had started the anger group, that part was true. He showed me registration emails on his phone. He forwarded proof of sessions and homework. On paper he looked like a parent fighting for change. Inside the house it still felt wrong. A few weeks later, we had another therapy appointment. This one included more talk about the boys directly. "What do you feel when you imagine their future?" the counselor asked. He stared at a point on the wall for a long time. "Honestly, mostly tired," he answered. She waited, giving him space to expand. He shifted in his seat, fingers tapping his thigh. "I do not get that warm picture everyone talks about," he added. "I see years of noise and obligation and never getting myself back." He did not look embarrassed saying it. I remember my chest tightening. Not because he admitted it, but because of how casual it sounded. Like talking about a long traffic jam, not his own children. The therapist turned to me gently. "What do you feel hearing that?" she asked. "I feel like he is describing a prison," I said. My voice trembled, but I kept it steady enough. "And our kids are the bars, not people in his mind." He scoffed again, a sound I had grown to hate. "You always twist what I say into something uglier," he snapped. The counselor intervened quickly. "Let us stay with your own feelings," she told him. "Can you imagine any version of life with them that feels meaningful?" He thought about it longer this time. His answer ended up being the final nail, honestly. "Maybe when they are older," he said slowly. "When they can talk and use the bathroom and not cling constantly." He shrugged one shoulder. "Maybe then I can feel something closer to what I am supposed to feel. But this phase right now, I despise every part of it." The room went very still after that sentence. Even he seemed surprised by how blunt it sounded out loud. He glanced at me, maybe expecting a blow-up. I just sat there with my hands in my lap. Something inside me had finally gone quiet. That night he came by to say goodnight to the boys. We had agreed on a short visit before his group meeting. They were in pajamas, jumping on the bed illy and wired. He stood in the doorway watching them bounce. A small smile tugged at his mouth, then faded. "Daddy, watch me," one shouted, pushing off higher. Another tripped and laughed, then asked for a hug. They all piled toward him, arms up, eyes bright. He hesitated just long enough for me to notice. Then he knelt and let them crash into his chest. For a minute it looked like everything might be okay. He kissed their hair and murmured something I could not hear. He tucked blankets around them and adjusted pillows. When they settled, he stayed there, kneeling by the mattress. His shoulders slumped like the weight came back all at once. I moved closer, standing just behind him. He did not turn around. "Do you feel any different yet?" I asked quietly. "What do you mean?" he replied, eyes still on the boys. "After the group, after all this work," I clarified. He exhaled slowly through his nose. "I learned better words for how messed up I am," he said. "I learned why I react the way I do." He reached out and brushed a hand over a small forehead. "What I did not learn is how to stop hating this role." That word hit me hard. Role. Not father, not dad, just something he was cast into. "Do you still wish you were somewhere else?" I asked. The question hung there between his body and mine. He could have lied, but he did not. "I wish I had never agreed to this many kids," he whispered. "I wish I could rewind before everything got locked in place." He kept his gaze on our sleeping sons. "I do not wish them harm, but I hate what my life became. I do not know if that will ever change." Nobody yelled. Nobody slammed anything. The monsters from the earlier chapters stayed outside that room. That almost made it worse. The quiet honesty cut deeper than any outburst. I felt my throat close. There it was, finally, said without rage, said without performance. The same core message from the forum, just stripped of drama. I looked at our boys, faces soft and oblivious. I realized I could not gamble their hearts on a maybe. He stood up slowly, knees cracking a little. He finally glanced at me, really looked. "This is not enough for you, is it?" he asked. The way he said it told me he already knew the answer. I shook my head once. "I wanted you to find your way to them," I told him. "Not just show up, actually want this." He swallowed hard and looked back at the bed. "I am showing up," he said quietly. "Sometimes that is all people like me can do." People like me. He had folded himself into a category now. Fathers who stay but resent every minute. I could feel anger rising and fading in waves. Underneath it sat a heavier feeling: acceptance. After he left that night, I called a lawyer. The number had been saved in my phone for weeks. I stared at it for a long time before pressing dial. My hand shook, but I did not hang up. A calm voice answered and asked how they could help. I need to talk about custody, I said. The words scraped my throat on the way out. Joint is fine as long as we are careful about safety. The person on the line asked for details. I told them about the crib, the posts, the counseling sessions. Hearing my own story in that order stunned me. No babies in my arms, no house noise in the background. Just dates and actions and phrases laid out in a line. I realized it sounded worse when you removed all my excuses. By the end of the call, my shoulders ached from tension. We set a meeting time. I wrote it down on the back of a grocery receipt. The scrap of paper looked ridiculous for something that big. I tucked it into my wallet like it might vanish. Then I went to check on the boys. Two were tangled together, legs draped over each other. The third snored softly with his mouth open. I brushed hair off each little forehead. My chest hurt with love and fear all jumbled together. I am going to fix this, I whispered to them and to myself. The next day I met with the attorney in a small office. We went over timelines and documents and options. They did not gasp at any part of my story. None of it shocked them, which was both comforting and sad. They slid a stack of forms across the desk. Filing does not mean war, the attorney said. It means clarity around what happens next. I signed where they pointed, my hand steadier than expected. Each signature felt like stepping onto a new path. A path I had been circling for months without admitting it. That night I told him over video call. I wanted him to see my face when I said it. He answered from his apartment, a sports game muted behind him. Hey, how are the boys? He asked first. They are fine, I answered, then took a breath. I talked to a lawyer today. His expression froze, then reassembled into something neutral. We are filing, I continued. Joint legal structured time with them, safety provisions included. The words came out measured and final. He stared at me through the screen. You are really doing this, he said slowly. I nodded once. I cannot keep pretending you will wake up one morning and adore this life, I replied. It is not fair to them to be wanted only halfway. His eyes went red around the edges. He looked away, jaw working. I went to group, he muttered. I did everything you asked. I shook my head. You did everything on paper, I answered. You never changed how you talk about them inside your own head. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For a second I saw something like shame flicker. Then it faded into tired resignation. Will I still see them? He asked. The question was quiet, almost small. Yes, I said. As long as you stay in treatment and follow the plan. And as long as you keep your hands away from anything that might break. He winced at that, but he did not argue. I never wanted to be the kind of dad with conditions, he murmured. I felt a bitter laugh rise and forced it down. Neither did I said. Yet here we are. After we hung up, I sat on the couch in the dark. No baby monitors buzzing, no doors slamming. Just my own breathing and the quiet of the house. Relief and grief crashed over me in alternating waves. I let both feelings sit there instead of pushing them away. The boys woke early the next morning, full of energy. They piled onto my bed with stuffed animals and blankets. Someone's foot caught my rib and I gasped. They giggled like I was part of a game. Mom, we made a mountain, one announced, climbing higher. I looked at their faces, all so different, all so mine. They will grow up with questions, I know that. They will ask why their dad lives somewhere else. Why he visits instead of staying every night. I will have to answer without turning them against him. What I will not do is lie. I will not pretend he adored every second when he did not. I will not tell them they are the reason he left. I will tell them they deserved a home where fear was not normal. And that I finally chose that for them. When people ask why I left a man who never bruised me, I think about his fist on that crib and his words on that screen. I think about his whisper in the doorway calling this life something he despised. I think about 3 small bodies jerking awake at every loud sound. Then I answer the question in my head before anyone else speaks. I did not leave because he hated parenthood. I left because he kept hating it near children who were listening. There is a difference, and it is the size of their whole future.